Hey guys, this week's video is dedicated to all our brothers and sisters in the land of Israel. Coming to you live from New York City, from the Chabad International Convention, where Chabad rabbis from around the world come together for a weekend of inspiration, of strengthening each other, lifting each other up, and networking, workshops, all the amazing stuff so they can go back to their communities and bring that inspiration, recharged and ready to roll. And it's an awesome thing to be in the presence of so many people who dedicating their lives together with their families to this holy work. It's truly amazing. Still have to have a thought of the week. God is involved in everything. We say this, we know this, but in the day-to-day life, we don't always see Hashem's hand in everything. We put a lot on our shoulders. I need to make it happen. Sink or swim is on me. Fail, succeed is on me. It's on my efforts. And we don't always openly see how, no, it's up to Hashem. But there are certain areas of life where once in a while we get to see it just openly, where it's not me. It's not me doing this. And I think one of those areas where you see this a lot is in relationships and marriage, where they're just the very idea of two people finding each other and for everything to line up. In a world of 8.5 billion people, for two people who are complex human beings to find each other and everything to work out is nothing short of miraculous. Nothing short of miraculous. And you see God's hand in this because otherwise it's not happening. We're not talking about rom-coms, Hollywood scripted, meet cute. We're talking about where people have to go through all the things. It's exhausting. It's emotionally draining. It feels endless sometimes. But that's the logical part. Of course, to find your other half in a world that is so vast can feel sometimes hopeless. But then you see how Hashem is involved in just bringing these two people together. And it's nothing short of where you have to say, this is beyond me. This is not up to me. This is something else making this happen. This week's Torah Parsha, Parsha Chayei, we have the first match made, first Jewish match made. Abraham sends his servant Eliezer to find a bride for his son Yitzchak, Isaac. And that's a lot of responsibility. And Isaac says, well, I'm going to find him. Isaac turns to Eliezer, turns to God, and says, "God, you got to make this happen. I don't want to mess this up." And while the prayer was still on his lips, Rivka appears. Rebecca shows up, and the Torah tells us that Eliezer was shocked. Not that Rivka appeared, but the open way that God was saying, "Dude, it's not on your shoulders. I got this. You have to do your part." But bringing two people together it's not up to you. You do what you can, but ultimately for everything to line up, I'm here, I'm involved. There's an amazing story I want to share with you of Rabbi Yom Tov Erlich, who was a Jewish composer, composed many beautiful Yiddish songs. And in 1950, he was a 35-year-old single bachelor. And while that doesn't seem like a big deal nowadays, back then in 1950, for a Hasidic fellow to be 35 and unmarried was quite extraordinary. And someone suggested that he should go to the Lubavitcher Rebbe for a blessing. This was right after the previous Rebbe had passed away and before the Chabad Rebbe had accepted the leadership. And so there was no secretaries, no appointments. He just walked up to the Rebbe's door, knocked on the door, and went in and asked the Rebbe for a blessing for marriage. And the Rebbe said, the custom is to write down your Hebrew name and your parents' Hebrew name. And so he said, I don't have a pen. So the Rebbe said, go out into the other room and see if somebody has a pen and come back. We'll write down your name. And so he goes out and there's a room over there and he says, does anybody have a pen? And a fellow gives him a pen. And he comes back to the Rebbe's room, he writes down his name, and then he goes back to return the pen. And the fellow said, oh, I see you were just in the Rebbe's room. What was that about? And he says, actually, I was asking a blessing for marriage. I'm older. And he says, really? I have an older daughter as well. And it hit him. He says, oh, the Rebbe has pens in his office. He has plenty of pens. Why did he send them out here? There's something greater. And he says, maybe this is an idea for my daughter as well. And he suggested his daughter. Rabbi Yom Tov Erlich went out with her. And as they say, they lived happily ever after. It was a match made in heaven. And so just to see these revelations, these little bits of God's hand in everything. Sometimes we get to see them, sometimes we don't. But the Torah is telling us in this long episode Why does the Torah spend so much time to tell us and to emphasize this idea? I am involved. God is saying, I am involved. You do your part, leave the rest to me. Shabbat Shalom.